the founder and discoverer of Christian Science, she would know what Christian Science means. That's her book. Her name is Mary Baker Eddy, and the book is called Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. And she says, the term Christian Science was introduced by the author, Mary Baker Eddy, to designate not a church, not a private religious club, but, you were right, I heard it, to designate the scientific system of divine healing. The scientific system of divine healing. So let's talk about healing today and how we can find healing in our life, in our family, and in our community. As Kim said, I was a lawyer for a bit, and then I embraced the ideas of Christian Science and became a Christian Science practitioner. And Christian Science is a bit like beautiful music. Anyone can practice the music, and we can all be musicians, but some people are professional musicians. So a Christian Science practitioner is someone who brings healing, who practices those ideas for anyone of no faith, any faith, and that's what they do all day long. So in that capacity, about 10 years ago, a woman came to tell me her story. And she explained that she had 2 young children, and during a routine medical test, she'd been diagnosed with cancer. So they done more testing, and then the conclusion was that was the disease. She was a very spiritual woman, you could tell, and so she explained that she left the hospital that day not wanting a chemical solution. She wanted a solution, but she felt it would not be chemical. It would not be chemotherapy or something. So she was grateful for the medical support, but she decided to go a different way, and she explored meditation for a bit. In all honesty, she was saying that she was afraid, but she pursued her spiritual journey, and so she did breathing and yoga and meditation. And here she was asking me about the very question we started with, well, what is Christian Science? She asked this very question. She said, well, what is Christian Science? And she gave a warning. She said, I don't believe in God. And I told her, well, I don't believe in God either. We don't believe that the earth is round. It is not a belief. We don't have a belief in the roundness of the earth. We know it. If we've flown around the world, we've experienced it. So it's not a belief in the roundness of the world. We know it. It's a conviction. We know it. So that's the point I was trying to make. It's not about a weak belief in God. But then she said, well, what is God? Well, I'm going to take my magical wand and turn all of us into a little fish swimming in the ocean next door. And if you're watching online, we're just right next to the water. So we're all fish, and so some of us are religious fish, others are atheists. So the little fish says, well, I'm an atheist. They say there's a big fish in the ocean that protects everyone, that a God fish, but I don't think there's a big fish like this. I'm an atheist. And the other guy said, well, I think there must be a really big protective fish that's really, maybe it's the origin of all fish or something. So what is God? Well, the short answer, God is the ocean. It's the ocean. It's not the painting at the top of the Chapelle Sistine, where you have God depicted as a man with a big beard. The point is not, the Bible doesn't say that God is made in man's image. It's the opposite. Man is made in God's image. So there's no big fish, it's the ocean. That's spirit, where we live, we breathe, that's where we are. So she liked that idea. She was still afraid, but she liked this idea. And over the next few months, we'll be working together, moving away from believing into really understanding those concepts. I'm grabbing the book Science and Health, which is really like a magnifying glass that you use on the Bible to have all the healing ideas of the Bible really stand out. So it's a magnifying glass. It doesn't replace the Bible. And she asked, well, how do I study those ideas if it's not about believing them? How do you study? Well, just like math. You can read many things and it makes sense and you like it, and your friend there reads the same thing but it doesn't make sense, so he or she has to pause, but you keep going. And as soon as you find something that is a bit problematic, you dig deeper. So I say, you take a page somewhere and you read, and it says here, in the order of science in which the principle is above what it reflects, all is one great concord. So well done if you understood what I said, because it's kind of a complex sentence. But I say, well, you pause and you look and you say, one great concord. What is concord? So you look it up in a dictionary. Concord is harmony. And you begin to really unpack those ideas. So you see, really, you have here belief, where basically you don't think when you believe. Someone told me that the earth was flat. Well, I believe too. I guess it's flat. There's no thinking there. But as science, even as spiritual science, it's about understanding. So she loved that idea. She loved that idea that I was not here to convince her of anything. It was just about going deeper and deeper and deeper about understanding her relationship to God and what is God. But she was still afraid, and the prognosis, the diagnosis. So she asked, well, what do I do with the fear? What do we do when we feel afraid for our health or for our government, for another country, for our family? How do we handle the fear? How do we get rid of the fear? How do we get rid of the fear? Because fear is at the root of any challenge. Any challenge has fear as its root, including disease. So how do we get rid of the fear? Well, precisely, we don't get rid of the fear. If we found a mouse in our kitchen, we may get rid of the mouse, but we don't get rid of the fear. Because, and it'll be surprising, but fear, just like darkness, is not something. Fear and darkness have one thing in common. We both seem to experience them. You can see a dark night, can feel afraid. But the thing they have in common is what? It is an absence. Darkness is an absence. Why does it matter? Well, how do you deal with an absence? Well, you find the presence. How do you get rid of darkness? You find light. And how do you get rid of fear? By focusing on God. God is light. God is the very presence of everything that is. So she liked that idea. And for the next few weeks, she'll just dig more in those spiritual books, the Bible and Science and Health, just to get the light out of those sentences, to get the light out of those ideas. Something that was groundbreaking for her was to realize that she was innocent, completely innocent. she had not done any criminal action. It's not the point. The point is, when you have a challenge and you feel, well, maybe I deserve it, or yeah, I was not so nice with the neighbor, so maybe the universe is punishing me. Well, to make it really clear, we're not sinners. We're not sinners. We are the very expression of perfection. And that was groundbreaking for her, that she could claim her innocence, that she was innocent. She did not deserve this challenge. She did not deserve this disease. There was no lesson for her in there, as if some mysterious God was tempting mankind with challenges. She felt really innocent. Then I did not hear from her from some time. I was praying, and I'll explain what I mean by this in a moment. I didn't hear from her for a while, but I knew she kept going. She felt empowered that she did not need a minister, anybody to guide her with those ideas. I said early on, it's like music. If you love the piano, you can get a piano teacher, but you can say, well, I don't want a teacher, I'll just teach myself music. So you get maybe a YouTube video with how to play the piano, and you try, and you're very good where someone else maybe helped, and that's what she did. So what happened to her? Well, I heard back from her later, and she shared what happened. And she said that one day she had such a sense of love's presence. Not Valentine's love, like universal love, another term for God, the one and all, the infinite one. And she had a sense of her oneness with the infinite. She had stopped seeing herself as a struggling mortal trying to heal herself, but as the very expression of this one. She had a sense of oneness. Words are somewhat limited to express a deep spiritual experience, but it's as if she had never seen herself in the mirror, it's an image, and suddenly she saw herself in the mirror and she says, oh, that's me, and wow, and it felt amazing, except that we're talking here about a spiritual perception of herself, of really not being detached from the universe, but being in the ocean, being at one with the ocean, not looking for it or begging the ocean or the big fish to do something, but just being at one with it. And that completely changed our consciousness. She felt joyful, she felt peaceful, and the last little pieces of fear and darkness were gone. She felt healed. In a spiritual way, she felt there was nothing wrong with her, that as if the whole thing had been a dream and she was waking up. A very deep spiritual experience. And then she walked out with no symptoms. All the symptoms that had been documented and tested and seen again and again were completely gone. She had no more pain, and she felt whole, and her experience was whole. There was not a single symptom, and as I recall, she said that she went jogging on that day, and it was the jog of joy, and she was healed. So let's see what happened. So you see, I mentioned the scientific system of divine healing. It was not an alternative therapy of some sort. It was a deep spiritual experience. Would you like to jump into another example so we can explore further? Yeah, good. You're good. So now it was about 4 years ago. My dear pregnant wife was expecting our third child. And I was standing in the doctor's office. There are many medical appointments that you have to have in France to have the baby. And he was a cardiologist, and he said there was something wrong with the baby's heart. My wife is English, so we had to go to England for a follow-up examination because we planned to give birth there. So there was other tests to be done. And every single doctor confirmed, specialist or general practitioner, that there was something seriously wrong with the baby's heart, baby to be born. So you can imagine that's not the type of news that parents are expecting. So suddenly we faced ourselves with an assault of fear and questions, and there was not question about what to do, because what to do, they say what they would do. They would induce my wife, no natural birth. We would have to move hospital to a big hospital in Southampton in England, south of England, where they were equipped for surgery. Because that's what they say. They say, we'll induce you, the whole medical team will be here, and we'll do surgery. And they say, which was not very reassuring, they said, if the surgery is successful, still the little one will be a heart patient all his life. His heart will have to be constantly monitored and checked all his life. So it didn't make us smile, obviously, but when you've experienced healing through prayer, many healings, Christian Science has been around for 140 years, and there's thousands and thousands of healings. And in my family, in my wife's family, then of course you get hit by the news, but you don't feel that you're helpless. As we've seen, you know that the fear you're feeling doesn't have to stay, that you can really do whatever it takes to embrace the sense of oneness with God, to see the fear diminishing. So still, we both called a Christian Science practitioner for spiritual support. A practitioner doesn't give opinions, doesn't give advice. It's just really using the system to expect healing. And I'm sharing this with you now just so that we can see how healing works. What is it the thing that does the healing? If we go back to the Bible and the countless healings of Jesus, there's a question at one point where Jesus is asked, well, how do you heal? And we know that he healed, and the people after him, based on his teaching, healed. And for a few centuries, people applying Jesus' ideas were healing others. But let's go to the Master and see what he says about how healing works. And he doesn't say, well, I'm Jesus, so I'm really super spiritual, so that's why I healed, and when you get to my level, maybe you will. He doesn't say this. It's all about, and that's key in healing, it's a rule of this system, it's all about self-abnegation. So what is self-abnegation? It's getting out of the way. It's your son is cooking, and you know that daddy says, well, let me do it. No, it's get out of the way. Just let me do it. Just get out of the way. Precisely, Jesus said, I can do nothing of my own self. I can do nothing of my own self, and we can say we can do nothing of our own self. Oh yeah, we can mess up sometimes, that we can do, but the good things that we can do nothing of our own self. But it doesn't mean we do nothing. Some of us are lawyers, engineers, stay-at-home mom. We do tons, but it's how we do it. It is really a reconnection. Prayer is reconnecting ourselves to our perfection. Prayer is to connect ourselves to our perfection, the very effect of ultimate perfection, God, the ocean. So prayer is a letting go to discover what is already true about us. It is not about making us perfect or even changing a baby's heart. It's really about embracing present perfection right where the challenge and the diagnosis or the fear seems to be present. So you see, prayer is really a discovery. It's a discovery, it's a connection, it's a quiet moment where we don't ask questions or wonder how we're going to fix this. It's really a quiet, still moment. So what is it that does the healing? Because healing happens with this woman I talked about. Physical healing happens. So what is it that does the healing? Well, to understand how healing works, we have to take just a step back for half a second to give some context. A few years ago, there was an article in a medical newspaper or magazine called The Lancet. It's a well-known British magazine. And just a few years ago, and there was a big discussion in this magazine, medical magazine, about what is consciousness and what is reality. What is reality? What is reality? And some neuroscientists were making different options, but a bunch of them were saying that, and were asking that question, that's their quote, is the whole material world, the neuroscientist speaking, is the whole material world nothing more than a dream? Question mark, and end of the quote. What's a dream? Well, a dream is a word to describe an experience. So what were they meaning by, why using that term dream? Well, most of us have experienced dream. Dream is something that feels three-dimensional. We feel we're doing something. There is time, there is space, there is hot and there is cold. And it does feel really real. And that's their point. They were saying that everything is consciousness, just like in a dream. Because actually, when we wake up, if we fall off a tree in our dream, trying to grab some apples, and we fall down and we get one apple, when we wake up from that dream of climbing the apple tree, falling and grabbing one apple, when we wake up, we don't expect to see the apple by our bed because it felt very real, but it was a dream. It's not saying the dream doesn't exist. When we were there, the tree felt real, and that's the point that the neuroscientists were saying. They say everything is consciousness. They were exploring different ideas. Others did not agree, but they were saying, is the whole material world nothing more than a dream? And I picked up that sentence because to me it felt straight out of Science and Health. That does use the term dream to define the human experience, our daily life. That really, in a nutshell, is a product of consciousness. We leave our state of thought. What seems to be body and trees and a physical life is really all consciousness. And that's really important to understand how this reconnection to our perfection, this mental work, prayer, can heal. Because I hope you can begin to see that if everything is thought, if our body is included in our thought, then a change in our thought, a yielding to a higher consciousness, a sense of spiritual presence, spiritual perception, will change our thought, will change our awareness. And if our experience and our awareness of it is the same thing, then our experience will change. So indeed, it does feel very tangible and physical, but it's just like a dream. And the point is to wake up. The Bible says it in all types of ways. At one point, Jesus says, well, if you want to inherit the kingdom of God, basically experience the presence of God, you've got to be born again. And not born of matter, born again. Well, those are images to show that, no, there is a reality present right here, right now, that is the ultimate reality. This is the ocean. And our task is to, in a way, to discover bit by bit a clearer sense of that reality. Jesus of Nazareth was named the Christ. The Christ was obviously not his last name. It was indicating something special about Jesus. So what was so special that he was called the Christ? Well, in Greek, yes, the Messiah, the one that was supposed to come, the anointed, but it is really a deep understanding of his oneness with the infinite. And he's the very first one that, for humanity, proved that he was at one with God. And it was very confusing because when he said, well, the Father and I are one, not everyone, but some felt, well, he just made himself God. But that was not the point. He was saying, I'm at one with the ocean. And again, he says, I'm not the Father, pray the Father. The cause of all things is God, and he's just the effect. And that gave him the title of the Christ, but the Christ is our oneness with the infinite. And the good news, he said, we are all at one with the infinite. When he gave what we call the Lord's Prayer, it's our Father which art in heaven. It's not my Father, but not yours. It is our Father. It's inclusive. So on a daily basis, this expression of our oneness with the infinite comes through little flashes of inspiration where suddenly we find ourselves in turmoil, faced with a big challenge, but we have a little intuition of hope or more, a sense of God. That's us reconnecting with our perfection, with the Christ, and this is what heals. It is what clears our consciousness and reveals our oneness. And this is what heals. So back to my child there. It was difficult. It was difficult to be, I remember one time to be standing right next to a medical doctor showing me a big scan on a flat screen, showing me the baby's heart and everything that was wrong and surgery and the whole thing. And well, it's difficult to maintain a pure thought. He was a loving guy, but the point is, I was embracing a spiritual perspective, a spiritual perception of the situation. So the thing that heals is this idea that comes to us, this sense of, in our case, perfection that becomes so clear and so true to our thought that's all we can think about. And I'm picking the term perfection because this is exactly what happened with my son, where my wife and I felt a sense of his perfection, the little one, that actually we're not ignoring the diagnosis, but we felt it's just like a bad dream. Actually, beyond it, we're all in the ocean, that this little one is at one with the infinite, and perfection is all there is about him. And that was the light in thought. And that drove all darkness, all fear out of our thought. We felt very calm about this. As we reconnect to our perfection, as we pray, different ideas may come to us. This one was about perfection. Remember, what was the idea that helped the woman early on? It was the idea of innocence. But that's the point. It's not some spiritual ideas that we come up with. It's not some form of a method of positive thinking where we're going to think a good thought and hopefully our thought will change. And that's not the point. It is Jesus' prayer. It is really going to the root of who we are and embracing something about ourselves. It can be our innocence, our perfection. And that's why prayer is really about listening. That's why self-abnegation is important, because if we feel, well, I'm going to do this, I have to do this, you're loud and you can hear. So it's about really putting ourselves aside to listen. Well, the end is beautiful, you can expect it. We stay with this idea of perfection, and so the final day came when the baby was out, and a little boy named Zach, and the doctors proceeded as planned. So they took the child away in intensive care to prepare for surgery. But you don't jump into surgery. You do all types of tests. Now that the baby is in front of you, you can do a few things. But as I understood afterwards, everything went wrong. Everything was right for the baby, but everything was wrong. They didn't expect what they were seeing. And the thing they were supposed to see, that they had seen, was not there anymore. So they did more testing, and then I ended up with my wife in the office of the main doctor, and he had those exact words. He says, "Your child, Zachary, is perfect." No more discussion of surgery, just gratitude, joy, and happy to go home. This illustrates that the point is never how big the challenge seems to be. And if we feel disappointed with the government, if we feel that our work situation is really difficult and almost incurable, if we've been given a diagnosis, it is never about how dark the darkness is, and our job is not to dig more in the darkness to see how dark it is or why is it dark. It is really about doing whatever it takes to turn our thought towards God in a way that makes sense to us. In this manual on healing, the author writes, for example, and I quote, "Hold thought steadfastly to the enduring, the good, and the true, and you will bring these into your experience proportionably to the occupancy of your thoughts." So you see, it's not how dark it is or how hopeless it is and what can I do or not do. It's shush. Psalm 46, "Be still and know that I am God." So we move away from the attraction to darkness and the almost wanting to slide down the slide of being a victim to stay strong, still, and to embrace a sense of God's presence. That's spiritual perception. Mary Baker continues later on. She says, and I quote, "When the illusion of sickness." So why illusion? Well, again, words are difficult to express deep spiritual experiences and practices, but illusion is the nearest right term. We saw dream of something that we don't ignore. An illusion is still has a presence. An illusion seems to be very present, so we don't ignore it. But by seeing it as an illusion or a dream, then we're less impressed or not powerless. We feel, no, it's just a temptation, something that looks very dark, but we know that a sense of light will take place of that darkness. So she might have well said the dream, but she says illusion here. When the illusion of sickness or sin tempts you, cling steadfastly to God and his idea, being. Allow nothing but his likeness to abide in your thoughts. We could almost have an equation which would be HC equal HE, human consciousness equals human experience. We're not responsible for all the evil in the world, but we are responsible about what we accept in our own thoughts. And we don't have to accept darkness. We live in the ocean, so it's not very far. We don't have to wait for the big fish to come rescue. It is right there. It is an awareness. It is an awareness. So do you think evil is an illusion? You can say no. That would help me, actually, if you say no. Disease, accidents, war, anger, jealousy, poverty, an illusion? Really? So I'll default by saying, I didn't make it up. Jesus did. But let's be precise, because when I know that when I'm in pain, or I've been in pain, it's not funny, and it doesn't feel like an illusion. It feels like, can you please stop? Jesus says about evil, and I'll go very slowly because it's really critical. So just a few words. It's very critical, so I'll go slowly. He says, evil is a lie. Evil is a lie. Jesus says evil is a lie. How do you deal with a lie? Well, a lie is dealt with the truth. You know the truth, and the truth removes the lie. Where? In consciousness. So that's how healing works, by finding the truth about any situation. I'm not talking about human truth, I'm right, you're wrong. It's a spiritual idea about reality. By embracing reality, embracing a clear sense of God, our thought change. And whatever seemed so impressive, the cancer diagnosis, the heart challenge, felt so impressive in our thought. There's nothing we could do about it. I could not help the doctor. They were doing their best. But it was oppressing my thought, and that we can always take care of. The truth always destroys the lie. Always. And that's the modus operandi, that's the way, a rule of healing. So would you like me to take a third example to continue to build on our understanding of how it works? Yes. Okay, that's an interesting question. But the question is, can I demonstrate with somebody? We'll do better than this. So the question says, can we demonstrate healing with somebody? We'll do better. You'll be able to do it when you go home. It's about you practicing for either a challenge you have or someone else. So hopefully this third example will just give you even more ideas. So let's continue to dig deeper on how really basically prayer works. What is prayer? Some years ago, I found myself with a growth on the leg, and it was painful. And I was not too worried. I was, again, applying those ideas to find healing. You may ask, well, why did you just go to the doctor? It's much faster. Why spending time? Why not the doctor? Well, that's a fair question. Why using spiritual means to find this sense of peace, this sense of God that manifests itself as healing, and not see a doctor? Well, it's obviously a choice we can make. I drove here in a beautiful old Buick that is parked in the back there. Old, not electrical, it's gasoline and a lot of it. And the owner is happy with it. But last week I drove in a beautiful Tesla, all electrical. The owner loves it, and both they can take vacations, they have fun, they enjoy their life. But you're not going to put gas in the Tesla because he doesn't need it. So the point is, spiritual healing is the opposite of relying on material perceptions of things. It's about moving away from a limited perception to embrace a freer, wider perception. But in this matter, and that's true with Christian Science as in any other matter, if you want to change car, you can change car, and you're not locked into anything. You do what's best for you. Out of kindness, because a family member was very worried about the growth on my leg, and because it happened that the next day I had a medical appointment for my kids for a school certificate. We were required to see a doctor for the kids. So since I had to go, out of kindness, I told this family member that I would show the growth to the doctor that would reassure her. I think it was a bit of a mistake because it didn't reassure me. When I was there and I showed this to the doctor, and she was really afraid, and she said I have to take antibiotics orally because locally was too late now. And when I timidly did not want to have a big spiritual discussion in her office. She had never been interested. But I felt, well, I find other ways for healing. I very timidly say something. I say, what if I don't take all your prescription there? Well, she looked at me like my first grade, very strict school teacher and says, emergency room. That's that. So I got the answer to my question. And so I walked home. At this point, I could not walk. I was so much pain that I had to borrow crutches to get home. And I was here sitting on this sofa with now more problems because the growth was still there. I had more pain, and I know in a few hours the family member would come and say, so how is it? So what do you do? And so I had like three problems now. But darkness is never real. It looks real. It has a story. It has a law, a cause, a history. But darkness is no story. Darkness is just an absence of light. You can take a little patch of darkness under a table in Africa, or a little patch of darkness under this car there. They're not different. They're both absence. They're just nothing claiming to be something. So I decided to pray about it. And the first thought that helped me was a sense of release, because she put pressure on me to take the prescription. And I felt, well, should I do it? Should I ask myself the question, should I take those pills? And I felt, well, I can. If I can do it, that's possible. I mean, there's a pharmacy down the lane, and I can take those pills. That's fine. Not done it before, but that's okay. I can do it. But then as I thought more deeply, and I hope it'll make sense now with what we've been seeing, is that really disease is a belief held in thought, whatever the name of it. It manifests itself on our body, but it is a mental experience. So what the pill does, it just replaces a belief in sickness by another belief in health, but it leaves you at the same spot of feeling limited mortal with no spiritual view of yourself. Where in all the healings I had of my dad, my uncle, my mom, my children, all those healings had proven that actually we were getting a bit more of the ocean experience, that actually we're not limited mortals, we're the very expression of perfection. And that embracing in thought, its side effect is whatever was wrong in the experience disappears. So I thought that I could take the pill, but it would not help. It may take care of a symptom temporarily, but it would not help with the deeper challenge in thought. And then, honestly, I thought, well, do I really believe that I can be healed? Do I believe that it's possible? And if you heard well or listened well, you would say, well, it was not about belief. It's, do you understand it? And I remember my eyes looking on the bookshelf with many Christian Science magazines there where there's tons of healings. And I counted them, and I felt, well, we're talking about thousands and thousands of healings. And I got confidence again that there is never a time where 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. It is a law. There is not a time where darkness doesn't disappear when presented with light. So I felt, I'm not here to suffer. It is not God's will that I'm sick in any way. This is middle-aged thinking. It is about embracing a sense of oneness. So what happened in the next few days, and I'm sharing this so you can understand how progress works, how healing and progress works. For the next few days, if a doctor had seen my leg, he or she would have said, things are the same. The growth is still there. It's been Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Things are exactly the same. Nothing has changed. Because from a material perception, that was the case. But that's missing the point. Healing doesn't happen in the body. Healing happens in thought. It's a yielding to the infinite. It's an awareness. It's a better understanding of a truth about our nature. And that understanding manifests itself in our experience, body if there's a challenge, or family or something. So what the world calls healing in the body is just really a side effect of the actual healing, which is a clearer sense of our oneness with the infinite. So I said 4 days, and it was about that time. 4 days physically was the same thing, but mentally, wow, that was spring coming. I've been in winter there. It was like spring and summer coming in thought with, I won't share all those there, but just many ideas, spiritual ideas about my value, about a sense of peace, many things that was really getting mentally, that was giving me a sense of peace, a sense of confidence, and yes, a clear sense of God. So you see, the disconnect is that when we apply those ideas to fix a challenge, it's never a good idea, but if we apply those ideas to fix a challenge, and we're tempted to look at the challenge to assess our progress, we'll be misled. If I've been having a challenge with my neighbor for 30 years, the guy is always angry at me for no reason, I felt, well, I'm going to apply those ideas and really listen to see how can I have a spiritual perception of my neighbor. So we're excited and we explore and we look at the Bible and Jesus says, oh, love thine enemy. But it's not about loving an evil man, it's about seeing beyond an evil man and seeing perfection, their true nature. It's not good enough to see ourselves as not sinners, but the rest of the world as sinners. It is to know their perfection. So let's say we do this, and that's the idea that helps us to really embrace that neighbor. But the temptation will be, well, we've taken 2 days in our garden, really quietly contemplating those ideas, and then on the third day we'll say, well, I'll go knock on his door, and I'm sure he'll come with a smile. And then we open the door, and the guy says, what do you want? Get out of my land. And I feel, my gosh. But you see how we're spiraling down that, well, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe I don't know how it works. Maybe, but because we've looked at progress in the wrong spot. Progress is a clearer sense of God, a clearer sense of our oneness, of our perfection, our wholeness. This is really where progress is. But just alone, us alone with God. Jesus says, when you pray, go in your room and close the door. It's not about asking out if it's better. So we can always gauge our progress, but it's always something internal, something in our thought. So what do you think? Was I making progress during those 4 days? Yes, I was making progress. The healing was not evidenced yet, but I was making progress. And the mental, the spiritual awareness continued throughout the week. And by the end of the week, I felt good enough to go have a big baseball game that I was supposed to play at the end of the week. But you know, the true sign of progress is that it didn't come to me to look at the leg, to try to see, I felt so detached from the appearance that I embraced a sense of freedom, a sense of energy. And when asked, I said, yeah, I'll go to the game. I was able to run the entire game. And it's only the following week that I ended up seeing the leg, and it was as clear as the other one. It had been clearing up completely. And to the question you haven't asked is, no, it was not a miracle. It's a demonstration of law, spiritual law, rules. Because we saw that human consciousness equals human experience. For some of us, it will take 5 minutes to feel so clear about oneness with the infinite, with the perfect idea of God. It'll take us 5 minutes and we'll have a very quick healing. For others, it may take us for the same challenge a year. And I find that in this practice, nothing is the same because it depends on how much fear we have, belief we've entertained for some time, belief of parents, other practices. So sometimes we find ourselves with a bit of a mental mess that needs to be cleared up. So it's never about that situation here. It's about our unique approach to it. But that's beautiful and that's Christian Science because there is no mechanism for someone to tell you what to think or what to do. You're left with your books, your ideas, and your practice. You're left with your piano books explaining how to play the piano, and then you play as much as you want, and maybe you mistake a few notes, but eventually you'll play well or something. But it's a joy on your own. It's not about listening to to anybody. So we mentioned the author Mary Baker Eddy, and I've asked that at the goodie table in the back there, that there would be a few biographies of her, because she was an amazing woman, and there's more to explore. If there is one word to me which characterizes this woman, so we're talking end of 19th century, yes, she was very humble, yes, she was a seeker, but she was very persistent. Christian Science, all those ideas did not come to her thinking like that. Actually, it was very confusing at first. She knew that the infinite God is pure good. She knew we're not sinners or punished. But it came very gradually to her thought, and just like the piano image I used, as she was embracing new, deep spiritual ideas, groundbreaking ideas, she experienced healing of her own situation, serious physical challenges that were healed. She was able to heal others, but to teach those ideas and teach those ideas in the book, which is just really going back to basically one sentence from Jesus that we don't read often, when Jesus says, if you understand who I am, if you understand my teaching, you'll be able to heal as I do. If you understand Jesus' teaching, you'll be able to heal as I do, because basically, you don't have fire without heat. If you have a fire, you have heat. It goes together. So once we become aware of our perfection, aware of our oneness with the infinite, well, that brings clarity in our thought, and our experience changes. It's even funny, at the end of the book, there are 100 pages of letters of people who've been healed by reading the book. And it is funny because some of them say, well, I read the book. I mean, I just wanted to know what it was. I read, and then I got healed. But I was not expecting healing. I was not even looking for healing, but they were healed. And why is that? Because what changed? Their thought. What became clear? Their sense of God. Maybe they came in and felt that God was a punitive God, and they felt, no, actually, it's about the gentleness of love, the universality of principle, the allness of soul, and that made sense to them, and they were like, yeah, I like that, yeah. And I'm saying agreement because then they were understanding it, and they got healed. And you know what's even better is that it makes us better citizens. Yes, it is natural to be healthy, wealthy, and happy and joyful. That's who we are. That's reconnecting with our perfection. The world says sometimes it's not possible, but no, this is natural. But why does it make us better citizens? Well, because now we know that the challenge out there is something that we either embrace in our thought or refuse. Let me share with you a really beautiful story that happened just a few months ago, where a Christian Science church north of Los Angeles was doing its job as a church. So I say church, but it's really a collective of Christian Scientists that help each other. There's not a priest, no dogma, no hierarchy, just like people together. And like sometimes you have penguins in the cold and just get together, it's cold. So they just help each other, but there is no hierarchy, no nothing. And very diligently, they have a beautiful Christian Science reading room, which is a cutting-edge place, which is where you can study those ideas for free or buy them, and there's 2 in town. Anyway, they used to be visited by a police officer who is the liaison for challenges in the neighborhood, and she has a dog called Bluey, and as a joke, it looks like the dog always wants to go to the reading room. I mean, so she always so she goes. The truth is, she likes going there. The officer loves going there. She has nice discussions, and then the church does its job. The members do their job about being aware of issues in the community. So, for example, for a few years, there were people, homeless people on their doorway, so they would do the practical thing, but really deeply the thing that makes the difference is how they perceive those people. Are they like people without a home and without a God, or were they quietly, mentally, really, I think we can use the term prayer now, we see what we mean, praying about them, embracing that sense of wholeness for them, and reporting that to the officer who liked that this church was very active for the community. So what happened a few months ago? Well, this usually cheerful officer came to the reading room, but she was really distressed. She was really down. And so she explained that she had never seen so many deaths because of fentanyl. That teenagers, adults, and despite the emergency medical package given in middle school, in high school, and despite the information that she was picking up bodies, and it was too much for her. So she found lots of comfort in the reading room about praising her for the good she was doing for the community, and just a sense of feels good to be valued sometime. And so she had a big hug there, and then the members took it to heart to do something about it. This is why it makes us good citizens, because we can do something about those things. We can do the practical thing, but even deeper, it's what we accept in thought. So the reading room librarian sent an email to all the members saying that this is what happened in the community, giving more details about what the county has been doing about it, and asking everyone to include that situation in the neighborhood, include that officer in their thought, to do some mental work, prayer, spiritual awareness, but not to ignore it. And they did for 3 weeks, where everyone individually, there was not a common prayer, it doesn't exist, it's about really what you find in your own thought, but they did it for 3 weeks. I say 3 weeks because 3 weeks after, the officer came back, and that's why it's a beautiful story, and she came back, and she came back cheerfully normal with a bluey, and she'd get chatty, and then the reading room attendant say, well, so how is the situation with fentanyl? And the officer paused, and she says, well, let me think. Because it had escaped her in some way. She said, now that I think about it, we haven't had a single death. We have not had a single death in the past 3 weeks. So they rejoiced together. It doesn't matter how big the challenge is. It doesn't matter how dark it is. If the darkness seems to be individual darkness, collective darkness, we have a role to play in what we accept in thought. We're not here to fix anything. We're here to yield to this divine presence, to do whatever it takes to take away our sense of false responsibility, that's abnegation, to embrace a sense of oneness. I would say a sense of love. That's the highest love there is, to be aware of love. And that will transform our thought, it will transform our peace, it will transform whatever we thought become peace, and we'll feel really still, and we'll feel that stillness that is the key of healing. Isn't this a beautiful story?
Yes. Really.
So I'll just conclude by reading a psalm that, in a way, encapsulates everything we've been saying. It's the Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thank you.